జీవధార చిలికిన దేశం. Thank you.
Before we proceed with our chief guest speech, I would like to inform sir that today in our gathering there are vice chancellors, serving vice chancellors, retired defense personnel, and then we have former DGPs, Mr. Indra, Mr. Jajendraji, and so many other, Hanuman Chaudhary, our senior most member of the Pragya Bharati is also here. And then we have Vice Chancellor Suresh here, the students, there are many bureaucrats, chartered accountants, lawyers, you know. So they have come to hear you, sir, on this subject. I thank one and all for having come here for this event. And I would like to acknowledge the cooperation of iFocus, Navadev Sharma, who is cooperating over there for giving us the logistic support for this program. Now I request Vyoma to kindly introduce the chief guest.
And now I would like to introduce the man of the moment, the keynote speaker for today's program, none other than Dr. S. Jaishankar Garu, External Affairs Minister, India. And now, before I proceed and formally introduce, I think I would use two adjectives that are absolutely apt, and sir is an epitome of that would be diplomacy and assertive in putting India's voice across in any of the meetings that he had been anytime. I'm sure he definitely needs no introduction because we have heard him several times, but yet let me take this privilege, honor to really introduce this esteemed keynote speaker for today, Dr. S. Jaishankar Garu. Dr. S. Jaishankar Garu is India's External Affairs Minister since May 30, 2019. He is a member of the Upper House, Rajya Sabha of India's Parliament from the state of Gujarat. He was Foreign Secretary from 2015 up till 18, Ambassador to United States 2013 up till 15, China 2009 up till 2013, Singapore 2007 up till 2009, and Czech Republic 2000 to 2004. Sir has also served in other diplomatic assignments in embassies in Moscow, Colombo, Budapest and Tokyo, as well as in the Ministry of External Affairs and the President's Secretariat. He was also the President, Global Corporate Affairs at Tata Sons Private Limited from May 2018. Dr. S. Jaishankar Garu is a graduate of St. Stephen's College at the University of Delhi. He has a Master's in Political Science and an MPhil and PhD in International Relations from Jawaharlal Nehru University, Delhi. He is a recipient of the Padma Shri Award in 2019 and has written a widely acclaimed best-selling book, The India Way, Strategies for an Uncertain World, which was published in 2020. May I now request sir to definitely deliver a talk and a message to us to really make us all think and think at the end of his speech. Thank you so much, sir. We all welcome you. May I request all of you to put your hands together.
Thank you very much. My ministerial colleague, Sri Kishan Reddy ji, Justice Subhash Reddy ji, Sri N. Ramachandra Rao ji, friends of the media, all the distinguished personalities gathered here. I'm really extremely happy today that I have the opportunity to come here, meet all of you, talk about something which is very important, which is very topical, and which Hyderabad has a very deep connection because I think 6 G20 events will be held here during the course of the year. Before I come to G20, I'm also very happy to be associated with the release of this book. And there's a reason. Actually, there are many reasons. One, I have a chapter. So that's a very good reason. I recommend you read it. But I must say there are some better chapters in the book. When this book came out, and I'm really very happy that you have taken the initiative to bring out a Telugu translation. Many of us have traveled around India, spoken about our Prime Minister using this book. And I hope when you all read it, I recommend 2 chapters other than my own. One is actually a very interesting piece written by our Home Minister, Amit Bhai Shah, which actually brings out Prime Minister Modi's political acumen, his thinking, his strategic vision. It's a very, very interesting chapter. As someone who spent a long period, along with him in politics. In fact, I think we are, the only 2 politicians who have written in this book. The other chapter, and I recommend it particularly for the younger people in the audience, please read the chapter of P.V. Sindhu. Read the chapter of P.V. Sindhu because it gives a young person's perspective of our Prime Minister. That what is it in him which appeals to the youth of this country. So I thought before I come to the subject, let me address this issue. Now, about the G20. The importance of the G20, I think both Justice Reddy and Kishan Reddy ji mentioned. Today, these 20 countries account for 85% of the GDP of the world, 65% of the population of the world, 75% of the trade of the world. But in reality, the importance of the G20 is much more than that. It is much more than that because today in the world, it is actually the premier forum to set the directions in which the world should go. Because the remit, the responsibility, the job of the G20 is actually to look at the challenges to economic development, to growth, to find solutions, to look at new areas which are coming up, which are challenges to the world, to find solutions for them. And these, the regular meeting, because the G20 meets every year, this regular meeting actually for the last, from 2008, because it became at the level of Prime Minister President then, this has been an increasingly important forum. Now, this forum has, of course, a meeting at the President Prime Minister level, which will happen in September. There are 15 ministerial tracks. The foreign ministers is one, finance ministers is very important. There are many other tracks. And again, just as an example, yesterday in Bengaluru, the finance ministers and the central bank governors track met. And the focus of the discussion was on cryptocurrency, was on debt, how to deal with debt, because increasingly countries today, for reasons which I will explain, are going into debt, and how to reform multilateral development by institutions and banks. So I mention this because it shows to you how relevant it is, how important it is, how topical it is, that the new issues which are coming up, but the old problems which also have to be addressed, all these today are being dealt with by the G20. Now, we took over the presidency of the G20 on 1st December last year. And I would say this, it's a particularly important moment to take over the presidency. It's a particularly responsible moment. Why? Because the world today needs direction, world needs leadership, world needs a strategy, a collective strategy, as never before. And there are very, very good reasons for that. The global situation, as we take up the G20, is today perhaps more concerning than it has been for a very, very long time. There are 4 big issues in the world. One, all of us are familiar with, the impact of the COVID pandemic. Now, we all know the COVID pandemic as something which came from some other country. It has affected all of us. I think there is nobody in the room who would not have directly experienced, or family member or friends. Many of us have suffered losses. But please think about the impact of the COVID on the global economy. What happened with COVID was, the entire world discovered that we are all depending on one country, one region, to supply many of the essential goods for the world. That in the name of globalization, we actually created a very over-centralized economic system, and this has, when it breaks down, has created very, very serious problems. So the world today is looking for, it's like in business. Nobody in business, even if you're a small business, nobody depends on a single supplier, because God forbid something happens. But what happened to the world? The world actually, somewhere in all the propaganda and the myth and the delusion and the attractiveness of globalization, everybody went in one direction. And what has today happened is, there is a search across the world for more suppliers, for reliable suppliers, for multiple suppliers. And this is today a very big issue which is affecting the global economy. A related issue, because the COVID put a lot of stress on the economies of different countries. We have seen in our own region, every one of our neighbors is having some difficulty, some more severe, some less severe. Now, the debt issue has become a very serious issue. That there are today more than 75 countries in the world who are having serious problems meeting their debt obligations. But you can't solve the debt issue if you do not reform the financial system. So that goes to the next area. And in all of this, what is security? We think in terms of when we say security, we say, okay, economic security is important. But economic security is not only the state of your finances. When COVID happened, and we discovered that, in fact, a lot of things we had to import from abroad. There was a period when even masks, when PPEs, when ventilators, when intermediates and basics for base materials for even pharmaceuticals, all these were coming from abroad. Today, I think the world has learned a lesson that security means not only physical security, not only economic security, it also means health security, it means food security. So we today have to find a way of de-risking the global economy. The way we would de-risk a sector, the way we would de-risk a business. And that is a very major debate, and I would say a very major concern of what the G20 would be looking at. The second concern is, of course, from Ukraine conflict. The Ukraine conflict is already something which is hugely damaging, because in this era, the destruction, the casualties, all of you have seen pictures of it. But again, look at the bigger consequences of the Ukraine conflict.